Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. And today we're looking into this pretty fascinating area. It's non-hallucinogenic serotonin agonists.
Right.
And basically we're talking about, how can we harness the therapeutic potential of psychedelics, but without the trip.
Yeah, without the subjective effect.
Yeah, without the subjective effects.
Exactly.
I've got some really interesting research here. And I know you've got a lot of experience in this area, so...
Yeah, this is a really exciting area, I think. It's definitely one to watch.
For sure. Psychedelics show a lot of promise, but the thing is, for some people, those really intense subjective experiences are a barrier to treatment.
Right. It can be really challenging for a lot of people.
So that's where these non-hallucinogenic serotonin agonists come in.
Exactly.
And basically researchers are trying to develop compounds that can target specific serotonin receptors.
Yeah.
And one of the big ones is that 5-HT2A.
Right, 5-HT2A.
Receptor. Yeah, that's the one that's really associated with those psychedelic effects.
So it's all about, can we get that therapeutic benefit, but without sending someone on a trip?
Exactly. You're looking for that sweet spot. Of activation.
It's like you tuning into the perfect radio station without getting...
Finding that right frequency.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so one company that's doing a lot of really interesting work in this area is called Psilera.
Yeah, they're doing some great work.
And they've got this lead candidate, PSIL-006.
Yeah, PSIL-006, that's the one that's showing a lot of promise.
Yeah.
Preclinically.
Okay, so tell me about Psilera. What makes their approach unique?
Well, they're really interesting because they're very focused on specific functional outcomes.
Okay.
So it's not just dampening the psychedelic effects.
Okay.
They're saying, okay, what's the
specific brain circuit or process that's involved in depression or anxiety?
Okay.
And how can we tweak that with our compound?
So it's a more targeted approach.
Much more targeted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And
very much so.
I know they've done some preclinical studies. Are those showing anything promising?
Yeah, they are. So their preclinical studies are showing that PSIL-006 can reduce anxiety-like behavior in animal models without producing the head twitch response.
Okay, now hold on. I got to ask, what's the head twitch response?
That's a good question. So the head twitch response is this behavior you see in rodents, and it's often used as a marker for hallucinogenic activity.
I see.
So the fact that they're seeing this reduction in anxiety without that head twitch response is really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like...
It's a good sign for sure.
It sounds like they're onto something.
Yeah, definitely.
But how does it actually work?
Right.
Like on a molecular level?
Yeah. How does PSIL-006 actually do its thing?
Yeah. What's going on there?
So remember how we talked about traditional psychedelics acting as full agonists at that 5-HT2A receptor?
Yeah.
So PSIL-006 and other compounds like it are designed to be partial agonists.
Okay.
So they activate the receptor, but not to the same extent as a full agonist.
So it's like a gentler message.
Yes, exactly. It's like you're sending us a softer signal.
Instead of, blasting it with a full signal.
Exactly. You're just kind of nudging it a little bit.
So how do they know how much activation is needed to get that therapeutic effect without going into the hallucinogenic?
That's a great question. And that's really what a lot of the research is focused on right now.
Okay.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And it really requires a deep understanding of the receptor itself.
Yeah.
The signaling pathways involved.
And a lot of experimentation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's like trying to crack a code.
Exactly. It's like you're trying to figure out, the secret handshake.
And it's not just about the 5-HT2A receptor.
No.
It's about the downstream signaling pathways.
Right, because you can also tweak those pathways to enhance the therapeutic effect.
So it's really understanding that whole cascade.
Exactly. It's understanding that whole...
Right, from that initial receptor activation to,
Yeah, that whole chain of events.
And changes in brain function.
Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about anxiety.
Yeah.
But what other mental health conditions could potentially be treated with these non-hallucinogenic compounds?
Anxiety is just the tip of the iceberg, really.
Okay.
There's also a lot of research looking at depression, addiction, PTSD, even some neurodegenerative disorders.
Really? Okay, so what makes these compounds so versatile?
Well, it really comes back to the serotonin system and how widespread its influence is throughout the brain.
Yeah.
So serotonin is involved in regulating mood, emotion, sleep appetite, even cognitive functions.
It's like a master control panel.
It is. It really is like a master regulator.
Yeah.
For so many things.
So by tweaking those specific serotonin receptors, you can potentially...
You can fine-tune the system.
Address a lot of different conditions.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now all of this sounds really exciting.
Yeah.
But what about the challenges?
Right.
What kind of hurdles are researchers facing?
One of the biggest challenges is that we're trying to predict how these compounds will behave in humans.
Right, because you've got the preclinical studies in animals.
Right, you gotta...
It's not always a one-to-one.
Yeah, it's not always a perfect translation to humans.
So it's kind of like mapping uncharted territory?
Exactly. It's like you're going into the unknown.
What other challenges?
Another big challenge is safety.
Okay.
Making sure these treatments are safe and effective in the long term.
Because these early studies are promising.
Yeah.
But you need that.
They are promising.
More extensive research.
But we need more data.
Yeah.
For sure.
But it seems like the potential payoff is huge.
It is huge. If we can harness this power without the hallucinations.
It could really revolutionize.
It could be game-changing.
Mental health treatment.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've been talking about the science.
Yeah.
But what about society?
Okay.
Do you think that developing these non-hallucinogenic psychedelics could lead to wider acceptance and faster approval for these types of treatment?
I think so, because a lot of the concern about psychedelics is about those subjective effects.
Yeah. So if you can take those out...
Yeah, if you take that out...
Then it's, easier for...
Yeah, it makes it a lot less scary.
Regulators.
Yeah.
The public.
For sure.
Yeah, it's like you're removing a major...
It's like removing a barrier.
Roadblock.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Exactly.
But then this raises another question.
Right.
A lot of people who've had positive experiences with psychedelics talk about, profound insights, emotional breakthroughs during these altered states of consciousness. Do you think something is lost?
That's a big question.
By removing that element.
Yeah. Is the subjective experience necessary?
Is it part of the healing?
Or is it just the pharmacology that matters?
It's like, is the journey as important as the destination?
It is a bit like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess we don't really know the answer to that.
We don't know the answer yet.
Yeah.
More research is needed.
More research is needed. Yeah. Okay, so we've been talking about Psilera. Are there other companies or research groups?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Who are working on
This is a really rapidly evolving field. There's lots of companies and research groups working on this.
So this field is really like...
Yeah, it's really taken off.
Buzzing with activity.
Yeah.
It seems like everyone's really excited about this.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement about it.
Okay, it's clear that these non-hallucinogenic serotonin agonists
hold
a lot of promise
they do.
For the future of mental health care.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to see what the next few years hold.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm especially interested in how these compounds might impact our understanding of the brain and consciousness itself.
Right. Because if you can target these circuits and change consciousness without hallucinations, that tells you a lot.
It really does. It's like a new era of neuroscience.
Yeah, a new tool to explore.
Okay, well, that's a question for another deep dive.
For another day.
For another day.
Yeah.
But for now, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back.
Sounds good.
And we'll delve a little deeper into how these compounds are actually interacting with the brain.
Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So ready to dive back in.
Yeah. Let's get back into it.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about, these non-hallucinogenic compounds and how they're like these, skilled negotiators with the serotonin receptors, especially 5-HT2A.
Right.
Triggering those therapeutic effects, but without the psychedelic fireworks.
Yeah, without the trip.
Right.
Exactly.
But what's going on in the brain itself?
Right.
How are these compounds actually changing things?
So one of the key areas of research is how these compounds influence neuroplasticity.
Okay, neuroplasticity. So that's the brain's ability to rewire and adapt.
Exactly. It's like
the brain's ability,
like a software upgrade.
To change and grow.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we know that traditional psychedelics can boost neuroplasticity.
Right.
But the question is, can these non-hallucinogenic compounds do the same thing?
Exactly. Can you get the benefits without the experience?
Yeah.
And that's really what researchers are trying to figure out.
Is there any evidence that they can?
Yeah, there is some emerging research that suggests they can.
Okay.
And it's pretty exciting.
Okay.
So preclinical studies have shown that these compounds can promote the growth of new neurons.
Okay.
And the formation of new connections.
Wow. So even without the trip?
Even without the trip?
These compounds are encouraging the brain to remodel itself.
That's amazing.
It's giving the brain a nudge in the right direction.
So how do researchers know which brain circuits to target?
Yeah, that's a great question because the brain is incredibly complex, but researchers are getting better at mapping the brain and understanding how different regions and circuits interact.
Right.
So they're using these advanced neuroimaging techniques.
Oh, wow.
Like fMRI and PT scans.
So they can actually see what's happening.
They can actually see the brain activity in real time.
So with this understanding of brain circuitry, they can then develop compounds that target specific areas.
Exactly. They can tailor the treatment.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But are there any risks?
That's a great question, and it's one that researchers are very aware of.
Okay.
Because while enhancing neuroplasticity can be beneficial, we have to remember that the brain is a very delicate system.
Right. You don't want to mess with it too much.
Exactly. You don't want to create any unintended consequences.
Okay, so it's a delicate balance.
It is a delicate balance.
What about the long-term effects of these compounds?
Yeah, so that's another area of active research. But early evidence suggests that the changes induced by these compounds could be quite enduring.
Really?
Yeah. So studies have shown that even a single dose of a psychedelic substance can lead to lasting changes in brain activity.
Wow. So one experience can have long-lasting effects.
It can have ripple effects.
That's incredible.
That extend far beyond the treatment period.
Yeah. So if these changes are so profound, what are the ethical considerations?
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that these compounds are used responsibly and ethically.
And that people are fully informed.
Exactly. Informed consent is paramount.
Right. It's about empowering people to make their own decision.
Absolutely.
About their health.
It's about giving people the information they need to make the best choice for themselves.
Okay. So we've talked about the potential benefits. But what about the challenges?
Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges is the complexity of the brain itself. We still don't fully understand how it works.
Yeah, it's like a giant puzzle.
It is. It's like a giant puzzle with billions of pieces.
Exactly. And you don't want to, force the wrong pieces together.
Right. You don't want to break anything in the process.
What other challenges are there?
Another challenge is the regulatory landscape.
Okay. Right.
Psychedelics have been stigmatized for a long time.
Right. Even though the research is there.
Exactly.
It's still illegal.
Even though the evidence is growing.
In a lot of places.
The legal barriers are still there.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge.
It is a challenge.
What about funding?
Funding is another big challenge.
Okay.
Psychedelic research is still relatively underfunded.
Yeah, it seems like there needs to be a shift.
Yeah.
In public perception.
I think so.
So that people understand that these aren't just recreational drugs.
Exactly. We need to see them as potential medicines with real therapeutic value.
Okay, now I want to shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And talk about how these compounds interact with the 5-HT2A receptor on that molecular level.
So this is where we get into the details of receptor pharmacology.
Okay.
And it gets pretty fascinating.
All right, I'm ready.
So the 5-HT2A receptor is not just a simple on-off switch.
Okay.
It's more like a complex protein with multiple binding sites and signaling pathways.
So different compounds can interact with it in different ways.
Exactly. It's not just about activating or blocking the receptor.
Okay.
It's about how you activate it.
Okay.
Which pathways you trigger.
Right.
And how strongly you do so.
And that's where this concept of partial agonism comes in.
That's right.
Right. So traditional psychedelics, they bind to that receptor and they fully activate it.
They activate it completely.
Right. And that leads to all those hallucinations and those altered states of consciousness.
It's like hitting the gas pedal all the way down.
Right.
You're going full speed ahead into psychedelic territory.
Okay, but these non-hallucinogenic compounds, as partial agonists, they bind to the receptor, but they only partially activate it.
Exactly. They're more like a gentle tap on the gas pedal instead of flooring it.
So they're triggering a more controlled response.
Exactly. They're steering the car in a more specific direction.
So how do researchers figure out how a compound is going to interact with a receptor?
So it's a combination of different techniques. They use computer modeling, chemical synthesis, and in vitro and in vivo studies.
So it's a lot of trial and error.
There's definitely some trial and error involved. But it's also very systematic and scientific.
So what are some of the key differences between how traditional psychedelics and these non-hallucinogenic compounds interact with the 5-HT2A receptor? So that's a really interesting question. And we're still learning a lot about the specific mechanisms. But there are some clues emerging from the research.
For example, it seems that traditional psychedelics might trigger a particular signaling pathway called the beta-arrestin pathway to a greater extent than the non-hallucinogenic compounds.
So it's like there's a specific route that leads to those psychedelic effects.
Exactly. And these non-hallucinogenic compounds seem to bypass that route.
Interesting.
Yeah. Another key difference might be in how they interact with different subtypes of the 5-HT2A receptor.
So there are different subtypes.
Yeah, so it's not just one uniform receptor. There are subtle variations. And these variations might explain why some compounds are hallucinogenic and others are not.
Interesting. So we're getting into really complex stuff here.
We're getting down to the molecular level.
Yeah, and it seems like we're just starting to scratch the surface.
Exactly. We're just at the beginning of this journey.
Well, so let's step back from the molecular intricacies and talk about the bigger picture. How do you see these non-hallucinogenic compounds fitting into mental health care in the future?
I think they have the potential to be really valuable tools. Especially for people who haven't responded to traditional treatments.
So it's like another option.
It's another option in the toolbox.
But we have to be cautious.
We need to be cautious. Do the research.
We need to make sure that they're safe and effective.
Exactly. Safety and efficacy are paramount.
So we've talked about the potential for these compounds to treat mental health conditions. But I'm curious about other potential applications.
Like what?
Like, could they be used to enhance creativity?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
so that's something that researchers are starting to explore. The idea that these compounds could enhance human potential in different ways.
So moving beyond just treating illness.
Exactly. It's about expanding our possibilities.
And tapping into, hidden reserves of creativity.
Maybe even unlocking new levels of consciousness.
But again, we have to be cautious.
We do. We have to be very careful and do the research.
Make sure that they're used responsibly.
Exactly. Responsible use is key.
So before we wrap up, I want to circle back to Psilera. And their work with PSIL-006. What's the latest?
So Psilera is making good progress. They've completed preclinical studies. And they're getting ready to start human clinical trials.
Wow. So they're moving from the lab to the clinics. That's a big step.
It's a huge step.
What are they going to be looking at?
So the trials will focus on safety and efficacy in humans. They'll also be looking at dosage and exploring its potential in different conditions.
So anxiety, depression.
Exactly. Anxiety, depression, substance use disorders.
Wow. That's really exciting.
It is. It's really promising to see this research moving forward.
So as we kind of wrap up this part, I want to leave our listeners with a question. Do you think these non-hallucinogenic compounds will revolutionize mental health care? Or are they just another fleeting trend?
It's a big question, right?
Will they live up to the hype?
Will they be a game changer?
And will they just, fade away? What do you think?
I'm optimistic. I think they have the potential to be truly transformative. I don't think this is just a fad.
So why do you think that?
Well, there's a few things happening right now that make me think a real shift is happening.
Like what?
Well, first, we have more and more scientific evidence showing that psychedelics can be effective for a variety of conditions.
There's definitely a lot of research coming out now.
The research is really exploding. And then second, I think there's a growing cultural acceptance.
I think that's true.
Yeah. People are starting to see them.
Yeah.
In a new light. It's not so taboo anymore.
Exactly. The stigma is fading.
Yeah.
And then third, we have these new non-hallucinogenic compounds,
right,
which address a lot of the concerns people had.
Yeah, like the trip.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all of these things together
Yeah.
make me think that real change is possible.
Okay. I like your optimism.
Yeah.
But as we've discussed, there are challenges.
Right.
There are risks.
Of course.
So how do we make sure these treatments are used responsibly and ethically?
Well, that's where research and safety protocols are crucial.
Okay.
We need to continue to study these compounds.
Right.
We need to make sure they're safe.
Yeah.
We need to get the dosage right.
Informed consent is important too.
Absolutely. People need to understand the risks and benefits.
Yeah. It's not just about, handing someone a pill.
Exactly. It's about empowering people to make informed decisions.
And we have to make sure these treatments are available to everyone. Access and equity are really important.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to touch on one more thing.
Okay.
What about the potential for misuse?
Right.
Could these compounds become the next drug?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Even though these compounds are designed to minimize abuse potential, any substance that alters brain function can be misused. So we need to be aware of that.
So it's not just about the compound itself.
No, it's about the context.
It's about the context, the culture, the education.
So we need to educate people about responsible use.
Exactly.
Okay.
We need to have clear guidelines.
It's like how we approach alcohol. Or cannabis.
Right.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
It is.
But it's an important one.
It is, because the potential benefits are so great.
Yeah. If we can get this right, it could really be huge.
You could really change the world.
Well, it's been fascinating talking to you today.
It's been a pleasure learning all about this.
Yeah, this is a really exciting field.
And to our listeners.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope you learned something new.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed it.
And that you'll keep exploring.
Yeah, keep asking questions.
The world of psychedelics.
And stay curious.
And medicine.
Yeah.
Until next time.